Right now in Ontario, over 700,000 people are unemployed. If you need context, that's a lot. The Ontario government is trying to reduce that number, and one of the ways they're doing this is the Ontario Skills Development Fund, a multi-billion-dollar grant program that is supposed to help organizations address challenges in hiring, training, or retraining workers. This program, or a program like it, has been around for years, long before the Doug Ford Conservatives. But this time, the grant recipients have been controversial.
And what was the common denominator? Lobbyists.
To the Premier, will he ask the Minister of Labour to step aside?
I think it's indefensible. I mean, he's essentially created a slush fund for PC donors.
An Auditor General's report found that Ontario's Labour Minister's decisions on who received grant money were more skewed than a French judge at the Olympics. Opposition parties have called for Labour Minister David Piccini's resignation. The OPP has begun a formal racketeering investigation into a company that received funds, and hundreds of millions of dollars have gone to organizations led by prominent PC donors. So let's look at the Ontario Skills Development Fund scandal, and how taxpayer dollars have gone primarily to PC donors or friends of the government, while hundreds of applications that were higher ranked have been passed over. The Skills Development Fund, or SDF, began in 2021, and between 2021 and 2025, it awarded over $1.3 billion to applicants, with another $805 million committed starting in 2025-26. Across the country, and in the past in Ontario, most programs like this award funding based on the recommendations of a non-partisan team of ministry staff with expertise in evaluating and awarding funds. The Minister's office usually simply gives the final sign-off. The SDF works differently. The Minister's office not only has full control over which programs get funded, it also controls how much each applicant gets. Ministry staff reviewed thousands of applications, ranking them high, medium, low, poor, or ineligible, based on how well they fit the criteria. 1,014 of those were selected for funding. Of those that were funded, only 46% were ranked high.
54% of all approved applications, representing $742 million in funding, were rated poor, low, or medium against the stated program objectives and criteria.
If you scored high in your application to this program, you didn't get the money. But if you scored low and you had a lobbyist, then you get the money. To me, that is textbook preferential treatment. Or in other words, this looks like corruption.
For the first round, the Minister's office gave no rationale as to why they funded certain applications and not others. In future rounds, they did submit written rationale, but it often conflicted with the application's evaluation. In one case, the Minister stated the office wanted to fund an application because it was ranked high, when it was actually ranked medium. The Minister's office defended these decisions, often because the approved applicants fit a specific government priority. For example, Keel Digital Solutions, which we'll talk more about in a minute, offered online counseling support for police officers, something the Minister's office apparently wanted to prioritize, despite their application being ranked medium. A review from the Minister's office of round 1 and 2 of funding found no relationship between the ranking of an application and how well it performed based on a few KPIs. However, the Auditor General's report found completely the opposite. Evaluating rounds 1 to 4, the AG found significant differences in the performance of high-ranked applications versus anything ranked lower. The ministry evaluated funded projects on a few KPIs to determine if there was a correlation between the assessment of a project and its results. Those KPIs are the percent of actual participants compared to the target, the percentage of participants who completed the project compared to the target, and the percentage of participants who gained employment within 60 days of completing the project. In the AG's evaluation, high-ranked applicants who were funded scored 98%, 90%, and 68% respectively. Low-ranked applications scored 70%, 71%, and 51%. So over half of the funding from the SDF has gone to organizations with demonstrably worse results, ostensibly because those organizations better fit government priorities. But critics may be right in saying that those government priorities are giving funds to political donors and allies.
We're seeing the minister now hanging out in Paris and at Leafs games with those very same lobbyists. So I want to ask the minister to come clean about his connections to lobbyists that have business before his ministry, or are we going to have to keep digging it up ourselves?
The connection between organizations that received funding and the provincial government go from damning to just plain odd. Only 3 places of worship, which don't pay taxes I may remind you, received funding through the program, amounting to millions of dollars. The first is the Church of the Virgin Mary and St. Athanasius, where long-term care minister Natalia Kusendova-Bashta was married and is a vocal member of the congregation. She gave a speech at the church 4 days before the last election about what the Ontario PCs had accomplished. The church received $1 million from the latest round of the SDF to train personal support workers to support long-term care needs. The church has received a total of $2.8 million from the Ministry of Labor. A priest at the church, Angelo Sad, has donated almost $95,000 to the Conservatives since 2020. The other 2 are Gurdwaras in Brampton, one that hosted Doug Ford as part of a Sikh group's endorsement of the Premier, and whose leaders attended a $1,000 per plate fundraiser for the Conservatives.
Because the minister's wife, Faith Chipman, is a lobbyist for Technology North. She's also a registered lobbyist here in Ontario. The minister can say there's nothing to see here, but there is a pattern. I mean, just look at who has benefited from this fund that he controls. We've got the Premier's campaign manager. We've got the minister's close and personal friend, the Paris Group. Now, we've got the minister's wife.
Faith Chipman, the wife of Labour Minister David Piccini, is a lobbyist with the stated goal of increasing personal support worker training for career colleges. Computech College and Mississauga Career College, 2 of the organizations Chipman lobbied for, received grant funding through the SDF to operate a personal support worker training program. Computech did not disclose the details of their funding, but Mississauga Career College received around $4 million in 2 rounds of funding. Mississauga Career College actually partnered with the Church of the Virgin Mary and St. Athanasius to apply for their grant. The executive director of Career Colleges Ontario, the group that Chipman lobbies for, is Kate Bartz, the wife of the former Labour Minister, Monty McNaughton, who also oversaw the SDF until about 2 years ago. So in this one application, you have the wife of the current Labour Minister lobbying for an organization run by the wife of the former Labour Minister for a college that has partnered with a church in which the long-term care minister is an active member and the priest is a large Conservative donor.
It is really shocking how deep this scandal goes and how close the connections run to this government.
In another case, the government gave $1 million to Connex Telecommunications Inc. to pay for them to develop an AI chatbot in their call center. Connex said that they were creating in-demand jobs for people to train AI, but beyond all of the problems with that statement, Connex is led by Sayan Navaratnam, the former CEO of a company called FaceDrive. Navaratnam had just paid a settlement to the Ontario Securities Commission shortly before receiving his grant from the SDF, because FaceDrive issued misleading and contradictory news releases about a COVID-19 tracing technology they had developed with $2.5 million in provincial pandemic relief money. FaceDrive didn't receive all of that money because they stopped meeting government performance targets for job growth and production levels. FaceDrive later went bankrupt. Yet that didn't stop the government from giving Navaratnam money to replace workers with a chatbot. Navaratnam has donated tens of thousands of dollars to the Conservatives, but in the interest of transparency, he's also donated thousands to the Liberals. In a more bizarre case, John Magirius received $2 million from the SDF for his company DentaCloud. Magirius owns another company, JM Dental in Etobicoke. Rob Ford was there at the ribbon cutting for JM Dental in 2013, and his kids still allegedly go there. Magirius has also donated tens of thousands to the Conservatives and has spoken at Conservative events alongside Doug Ford. So as I was editing this, I learned that DentaCloud is part of this organization called the Canadian Federation of Dentistry, which is a group that is led by none other than Kate Bartz, the wife of Monty McNaughton, who was the Labour Minister at the time. DentaCloud and another company called Elite Practice, which is run by a guy named Carlo Biasucci, who's also a PC donor, were both part of this organization. They were both lobbied for by Rubicon, which is Corey Tenecky's lobbying organization. And those two companies are the only companies out of over 1,000 organizations given funding that are related to the dental care industry that got money. One of the most publicized and dramatic alleged uses of funds was $10 million from the SDF going to an adult entertainment club. Although there is a connection between the numbered corporation that received $9.8 million in grants and FYE Ultra Club, which is an adult entertainment club, it's not clear if any of that grant money was used to train strippers or other adult entertainers. However, the spokesperson for the Ministry of Labor said that, quote, tourism and hospitality are major economic drivers. Training workers to contribute to that economic output is exactly what the Skills Development Fund is designed to do, which certainly doesn't rule out strippers. The organization that received the funding, the Social Equity and Inclusion Center, says it supports women re-entering the workforce and provides retraining to women who may need to enter a new line of work, which also doesn't rule out strippers. That numbered corporation and its executive director are part of another criticism of the fund, that it's being used as a slush fund to increase the salaries of executives. Eugenia Andonov, the director of the numbered corporation, had a salary of a little over $100,000 in 2021-2022 when they received $250,000 in grants. In 2024, when the grants had increased to just under $3.5 million, their salary rose 24% to $125,000. Ontario Good Roads Association received a $1.1 million grant in 2022-23 and a $1.7 million grant the following year. Its executive director's salary rose from $254,000 to $287,000. Communitech's president and CEO's salary rose from $294,750 to $471,000 from 2021 to 2025, as Communitech received about $27 million in grants. All of these companies, and the nearly dozen more where a similar pattern has been noticed, say that these salary increases were entirely based on private revenue and had nothing to do with grants. But it is suspicious that these large salary increases corresponded with getting or increasing government grants. The poster child for all the problems with this program is a company called Keel Digital Solutions. They have received over $40 million total from the provincial government across a couple of programs, and were flagged for suspicious activity that was referred to the OPP. David Piccini is directly connected to Keel Digital Solutions in a few ways. A lobbyist for the company invited Piccini to attend his wedding in Paris, France, and Piccini was at a ringside seat at a Toronto Maple Leafs game with the director at Keel before he became Labour Minister. Piccini said that he paid both for the wedding and the tickets to the game, but he couldn't give specifics on the cost of the game, and that still wouldn't remove a potential conflict of interest. Jay Fishbach, the COO at Keel, has said they have been made a scapegoat for all of the other issues going on with the SDF. The details on what exactly triggered the investigation into the company are vague, stated only as irregularities or suspicious activity. But Fishbach says any suspicion into Keel and the referral to the OPP only happened immediately after the SDF scandal broke. Regardless, Keel received around $10 million, despite being a lower-ranked application. The SDF is currently in its 5th round, and despite the ministry agreeing with all of the Auditor General's recommendations, little has changed. If anything, it's gotten worse. 63% of the $345 million that's been given out in this round went to organizations led by PC donors, constituting around $1.3 million in PC contributions. The recipient of the largest grant in this round, $14 million, was the Carpenter's Regional Council, which raised nearly $120,000 for the Labour Minister's riding at a fundraiser. It was announced on January 24, 2025, that the Carpenters Regional Council would get $14 million from the SDF, on top of another $13.3 million through another stream. Almost exactly a month later, about a week before the provincial election, the Carpenters Regional Council endorsed Doug Ford's PCs for the first time ever. What are the chances? 8 out of the top 10 recipients of this round are led by PC donors. 9 clients in round 5 are represented by Corey Tenecky's lobbying firm. Tenecky is Doug Ford's campaign manager. To show the impact of these potential donations, in 2020, Piccini's Riding Association received around $50,000 in donations. In 2024, his second year as Labour Minister, it received almost $450,000. A reverse trend happened with previous Labour Minister McNaughton, whose association received over $450,000 in 2022, his last year as Labour Minister, and only $29,057 in 2024. The Auditor General report concluded that the SDF is, quote,
not fair, transparent, or accountable.
It is the donors and the lobbyists that are connected to this government. It is the strip clubs and the numbered companies. It is the endless grift of a anti-democratic and, yes, corrupt government.
ask the member to withdraw.
Speaker, I will not.
The member has been named. You will have to leave the chamber.
The government has said repeatedly that the program is working and has created jobs. But objectively, over 50% of the applications funded have been ranked medium, low, or poor, and have had worse outcomes than projects ranked high, hundreds of which have been passed over. Meanwhile, one of the largest common denominators in determining why a project was funded is the connection between the organization and someone in the Ford government. That does sound an awful lot like corruption. That's the end of the video. Thanks so much for watching. If you like stuff like this, please like, comment, subscribe, and ring the notification bell. And of course, an extra special thanks to everyone over at Patreon. If you want to support Canadian content like this, you can sign up over there. The link is in the description. Thanks, and I'll see you on the next one.